Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Survived the heat wave?
Yeah, spent a lot of time in air conditioning, as I hope most of our listeners did, given that this heat wave covered about half the country.
Yep, it's pretty amazing. I hear a lot of people, though, instead of going to the gym, just stood outside and lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, it certainly was hot enough to do that. I did see a couple of videos of people baking cookies out on their stoops, just putting out a pan and letting the cookies bake in the heat. So hopefully everybody has had fun with the heat wave and came through it all right.
Absolutely.
So we've got a special guest here today. We are here with Annisa Teich of the West Hartford Co-working. Annisa, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're doing fantastic. And we are here to talk about the changing face of work. And, it wasn't that long ago that basically your option was you went into an office, you did a job, that was it. Or you worked out of your house. Now we're finding all sorts of middle ground between those two. And you're right in the middle of all of this, aren't you?
That is the truth. Yep. It's a fun place to be.
So tell us a little bit about West Hartford Co-working.
Sure. So we are a suburban-based co-working facility. We currently occupy about 2,000 square feet in the center of West Hartford, Connecticut. We have about 30 members of various membership levels, which I can go into in a little bit. But really, we cater to the entrepreneurs, small businesses, a lot of folks that, also can work and do work remotely for larger organizations. But surprisingly so, their organizations don't pay for them to do so, which is always interesting. And it's often assumed that their organization does. And so with all of those sort of audience sets in mind, we definitely focus on affordable co-working options for our members.
All right. Now you mentioned in that description suburban co-working. First of all, for those of our listeners who are not familiar with co-working, can you tell them a little bit about what co-working spaces are? And then, what's the difference between suburban and urban co-working?
Absolutely. So co-working is essentially shared office space that can take on many forms. Ours is typically desk-based co-working, and so we offer folks the ability to kind of own their own desk. They are members. They're not leasing from us. There's no real estate transaction, which is kind of an interesting tweak with co-working spaces. So you're a member and you have a desk that you've claimed. You pay on a monthly basis to occupy that desk. You can move in, do what you want. We also then offer part-time options where you're, or in other facilities are often called hot desks, where you can be with us for a certain number of days out of the month and choose desk that's available when you are here. We also offer conference room options for our members or for folks that are not members of the desk spaces, also open to the public. But really, we're building a community here among all of those members. And so we do a lot to bring everybody together, whether that's educational events or networking events, little luncheons, things like that. So again, that can take on many forms. Each co-working space or large entity, as there are many, kind of take on different levels of membership or focus on different things and different audiences. So each space really has its own unique flavor. And so it's become really interesting to sort of go into your question about suburban. It's become interesting to watch co-working spaces now kind of bleed into or start to become popular outside of the metro areas and into more suburban markets, tertiary, secondary markets. The difference is, and this is speaking from a Jersey girl, somebody that's been a member of spaces in larger metro areas like New York. In a larger metro area, you're kind of used to being, squished in like sardines. There's just so many people. And it's wonderful because, co-working is so prevalent. I mean, the running joke is there's as many like WeWorks in Manhattan now as there are like Starbucks, and the joke was there was a Starbucks in every corner. WeWorks is giving them a run for their money. But that, being one of the larger organizations, there is also plenty of room for smaller boutique organizations that come in to occupy this co-working market. But again, people in those areas are used to kind of being, squished in like sardines, kind of very noisy. The noise in a facility like that kind of becomes like the white noise, like working in a coffee shop, right? People move out of the metro areas to the suburbs for space, right? So
Right.
space in your home, space on the highway, just some more space. And so similarly, co-working facilities and the mentality, the expectation of members in suburban-based locations mimics that, whereas they don't want to be kind of squished together like sardines. They don't, I always say here, it's not a library. You're certainly, people do talk at their desks as they should, but they don't want that constant buzz of noise. And so we do provide, maybe more conference room time so that they can pop away, and have a call, phone booth so they can have a private conversation and things like that. Because the choice here, again, in people moving out of the larger metro areas for space, a lot of our members have the choice to work from home. They have a large, even if it's their couch, they have, or a home office, whatever, they have the ability to work from home. But working from home can be very distracting, right? You've got like your kids running around, or like your dog's barking at the birds. If there's a basket of laundry that you're like, oh, I should really, deal with that. It can be very unproductive and kind of lonely. So, that also has to do with, not being in a large city around like just people all the time. So just to be in a space where there's just kind of like collective productivity has been really valuable for our members. And again, in providing them with affordable options, whether that be if they, want to get completely out of their house all the time and have a dedicated desk membership, or they don't feel guilty in doing like a part-time membership. So they can get out of the house for like, 1 or 2 days a week. So that's sort of the difference in the mentality and the expectation in like an urban market versus a suburban market.
Yeah, I imagine that in the urban market, you probably have a lot more people who are working for other people that are renting the space out there, whereas in the suburban area, you probably have a lot more entrepreneurs moving in there. I mean, what's the mix of types of people that you have as far as people who are renting the space there, and not only but it's full time, but also the part time people? And one of the nice things for flexibility, as you mentioned, is just being able to call up and set up a meeting to go in there instead of having people come to your house or having to meet at a Starbucks or something like that.
Exactly. So it's a bit of a mix in our space. I think, and it also depends on the industry, right? I think the technology industry in general is a little bit more progressive in their expectations of the workplace or the physical location of their employees. Maybe because a lot of the ways in which, remote employees stay in touch is technology based. So that's been certainly more progressive in that industry. We do have a number of folks that work for technology companies, and so they are remote members of those organizations. But I would say we're about 60-40, being 40 about like remote workers and 60 some type of an entrepreneur, whether it's an independent or part of a small business, and then they have a seat here, right, locally. But the interesting thing is, again, I sort of mentioned this in the beginning, of the remote workers, again, largely people that work for technology companies. So we have some that are not, or sales. Sales is always, of course, folks that travel a lot. That's always been a little bit more conducive with being remote. The interesting thing is they're not, although they're progressive, a little bit more progressive in allowing their employees to be remote or to go remote. The key word there is allow. And so a lot of people that I talk to are shocked when I say that just because they're a remote employee of an organization does not mean that their company is paying for it. So there are a variety, a lot of our members, actually more so than not, that are paying, as a remote worker, they're paying for their space here in their company as much. Because, again, this is progress that needs to be made still. The mentality of some of these organizations, I've worked for a number of them, as well. They're already doing you a favor in allowing you to be remote. And so, they're like, I don't have to pay for space for you. Like, you're not occupying a desk in one of our main offices. Like, cool, you're on your own. Like there's yet to be that push towards like, well, they're not occupying a space in your office. You over time do not need to, if more of your company employees go remote, you don't need to occupy as much real estate, hence saving the organization money. So there's a little bit of that where, again, there's progress that's been made, but still a lot more to come. And I think that has to do with also a general uneasiness that a lot of organizations still have about allowing their employees to be remote. If they're not there, for them to, quote, micromanage, because micromanagement I know is still a huge issue, and I think bleeds into the reason why remote working is not as widespread yet. They can't see you. They don't know what you're doing. And so the thought of even coworkers, and again, I've been in the same situation having been remote for 2 different organizations. The mentality of your coworkers that might be at the home office is that the remote employees, they log in for 2-3 hours a day and then they do nothing all day. There's a lot of that still needs to culturally be worked on in regards to remote workers. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a challenge for the business themselves to actually manage their business with co-working out there. But the bottom line is, obviously, they're saving on the space that they have. And if you're working in your home versus going to a co-working space, I mean, the bottom line is you're paying for your home too. So I can understand them not wanting to pay you to go someplace else. And yeah, the accountability is really, really the biggest thing. I mean, my daughter-in-law works for a big company out of New York and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, she's able to do that from time to time, and I've seen her working from here, and it's great flexibility wise and so on. And it's the wave of the future for big companies, but also entrepreneurism really is just scratching the surface because so many of these big companies are downsizing, which gives a lot more opportunities for people to start their own businesses. And one of the big benefits in working in co-working spaces is the mix of the different businesses that are there and the talent and so on and so forth. So I'm sure that you see a lot of people collaborating together in areas that they never would have thought of if they hadn't been working there with other people. So that's a really huge advantage as far as I'm concerned. And I know that actually Eric got us involved with a co-working space to run networking meetings for those people there to kind of bring out the best there too. So you do have a lot of flexibility, and really it's just what you can come up with in your mind as far as how to realize the true benefits of being there with a whole bunch of diverse people, not to mention getting rid of the loneliness like you were talking about, because tired by like me, I don't have to worry about kids running around and that kind of stuff. And it's nice looking out in the woods in the backyard, but it's really, really nice being with people too.
Yeah. And it really, it depends on your personality. And so, we know that our members, as any, co-working space, the personalities and the workspace needs and preferences certainly vary. We do certainly have folks that are much more introverted, and they come in and they, kind of do their thing. They might have headphones on most of the day. They're not super active in sort of the other community building activities, events that we have going on, and that's fine. That is not what they want to get out of the space, right? That is fine. And then there are others that do want to, kind of be part of the larger community for this, yes, maybe there are ways they can collaborate, projects, business to kind of be had between each other. And we have had a number of those opportunities where, coworkers have struck up conversation